Hi, this is Elizabeth, one of the co-hosts of Beauties and Headcanons. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hey, it's Baxter Colburn here from Public House Media. Did you know that we just added a store here at Public House Media? No, I'm not talking about a grocery store where you can go buy apples or bananas or peanut butter, which are all fantastic, especially when peanut butter's on all of those. Anyway, we've added a store here at Public House Media so you can not only come and represent your favorite podcast network, but also represent your favorite shows as well, too. Just go over to thepHmedia.com and look in the top right corner where you'll see the button that says Store. Click on that and you can search through all of our great products. Or if you go to our Facebook page, Public House Media, you can see on the left-hand side a tab that says Store. All of our products are listed there as well too. It's the new Public House Media store. You don't want to miss it. It is fantastic. Buy some of that great swag to support your favorite shows and to support Public House Media. Check it out today.
This is John Lauder, host of The Cheap Seats here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, The Cheap Seats, where we talk about sports from the fans' perspective. A new show comes out every Monday. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of The Cheap Seats. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
There we go. Oh, this is so hard to get going. Seriously, using a selfie stick as a tripod is like some of the worst decision making that I've ever made in my life. Anyway, it is hashtag No Filter Friday again, and although I don't actually have coffee, I do have a hydro flask for Pete's coffee. Hello, person coming in. Leave me a comment or something so I know who you are. But thank you for joining us. Anyway, it's Bill Cosby night because old Dr. Huxtable has found himself convicted of 3 different counts of sexual assault, I guess. Craziness. But what I thought was more interesting than him getting convicted was the tweets that have come out of him getting convicted. So let's talk about what actually happened first, and then we'll get to the fun part, which is reading Twitter. Let's see here. Bill Cosby. Let's do guilty. G-U-I-L-T-Y. G-U-I-L-T-Y. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Okay. New York Times. No, that's no fun. Let's see if we can get a trade publication. Vulture? Let's go Vulture. Oh, wait, maybe Vanity Fair. Oh, yeah, we're doing Vulture. So this was posted 13 hours ago by Vulture. Hello, people that joined us. Leave me a comment so I know who you are, and I can say hello to you. All right, so here's the article from Vulture. When Bill Cosby was found guilty on all 3 counts of aggravated indecent sexual assault yesterday, a flood of questions followed, particularly what happens next for the comedian. Everybody's wondering if he's going to go to jail or not. I personally think he's got too much money to end up actually in jail, but we'll see. In many ways, his case and the subsequent verdict is breaking new territory. Cosby is the first famous man accused of sexual misconduct to be tried and found guilty of his crimes in a criminal court during the era of hashtag #MeToo. He's also going to turn 81 next month. Ooh, I didn't know he was that old. He is old. Apparently Jell-O does the body good, folks. And has been diagnosed as legally blind. What? Hello, David Bobkey. You edit the podcast version of the show? Oh, bless your heart, baby doll. Thank you so much for doing that. And for all the people on iHeartRadio and Google Play and iTunes that download it. Anyway, where were we? and has been diagnosed as legally blind. Two factors that likely influenced the judge's decision to place Cosby under house arrest yesterday rather than sending him directly to a jail cell. We know you have questions about this very complicated case, so we've tried to answer them all. Was Cosby found guilty? What was Cosby found guilty of exactly? Cosby was found guilty of 3 different felony indecent assault charges. Cosby was found guilty of 3 different felony indecent assault charges, each carrying sentences up to 10 years in jail. He's now considered a sex offender. To be fair, Bill Cosby's been considered a sex offender for a long time, just not officially. The first count found Cosby guilty of sexually assaulting Andrea Constand in his suburban Philadelphian home in 2004 without her consent. The second found that she was unconscious or semi-conscious at the time of the assault, and the third found that Cosby gave Constand an intoxicant that severely impaired her ability to give consent. What makes his crimes indecent? Pennsylvania has a separate charge from sexual assault known as indecent assault. That's interesting. It's similar to sexual assault, which is defined as engaging in a sexual activity with another person without his or her consent, but it's different in that it considers whether this is done under the threat of force or when a person is incapacitated or intoxicated. I like this rule. That's a very good rule, because that's kind of the big thing with this particular case, and I think it's probably what finally got him was his proclivity for drugging people. Like, it was part of his process, and the process is what always catches them. Okay, so what happens next? The district attorney office initially asked that Cosby's $1 million bail be revoked yesterday so that he would have been incarcerated directly following court proceedings. The judge disagreed and opted to honor the comedian's bail. This means the 80-year-old can stay... Okay, is he 80 or 81? They need to get this together, Vulture. Can stay under house arrest with GPS monitoring at his estate in suburban Philadelphia until he faces sentencing. Within 60 to 90 days, the sentencing gives Cosby's defense team and prosecutors the opportunity to present any evidence that may influence the next penalty phase. So he's been charged, but he's not been sentenced. And that is a gap, folks. And gaps are where things are lost. So Cosby just gets to sit in his big, beautiful home after being found guilty of drugging and raping women. Yes, but Cosby cannot leave his home and or jurisdiction as he awaits sentencing, or he risks having his bail revoked and therefore being sent immediately to jail. Jail, not prison. Jail is where you go for less than 1 year. Prison is where you go for more than 1 year. The prosecutors were initially concerned that Cosby, because of his means, might try to flee. He was asked to surrender his passport and agree to the terms of his bail, which includes wearing a monitoring device to track his movements. Oh, Dr. Huxtable got a ankle bracelet. Next, the court will assess Cosby to determine whether he's a risk to society. They will also consider factors like his age and health to help determine his sentencing later this summer. Being almost 81 and legally blind could certainly impact the sentence. Is Cosby living in the same house where he drugged and raped Constand? Yes, he is. Wow, that's really interesting. Is Cosby now a felon? Yes, he also must register as a sex offender for life. Although he's either 80 or 81, so maybe that's not so long. Can Cosby's lawyers appeal the verdict? Absolutely. In fact, right after the verdict was announced, Cosby's lead attorney, Tom Messereau, I'll show you his name so you can see it. Tom Messereau, that guy right there. Tom Messer said he would appeal. What happens in an appeal? We all know what happens in an appeal. For Cosby's legal team to appeal the verdict, they must have legal bias for doing so. In other words, his attorneys can't simply appeal the verdict because they don't like it. The defense will need to pinpoint an incident or statement from the retrial to suggest it may have led to an unfair verdict. Cosby's legal team can appeal in a few different ways in the state. They can submit a motion asking the judge to overturn the jury's verdict, or they can move to a new trial. They could also ask a higher court to reconsider the conviction. In Pennsylvania, a notice of appeal must be filed within 30 days of sentencing. So, most of the time when people file for an appeal, it's because, or they're citing that there was an error of law. There has to be some sort of grounds to appeal from. You can't just be like, well, I don't dig it. It's not Scream Queens. Like, you can't just appeal things. Do Cosby lawyers have anything to actually appeal? That's debatable. Cosby's defense attorneys could potentially appeal on the grounds that the 5 women who testified that the comedian drugged and raped them prejudiced the jury. They may also point to any of the judge's rulings during the retrial as a reason for appeal. Good luck with that. Why does Cosby face 10 years in jail for each count? Did they make up that number? Indecent assault is considered a felony in Pennsylvania, making it punishable by up to 10 years in jail. These sentences vary from state to state. Maybe being tried in his home state was not... Well, I guess it took place there, so he didn't really have a choice. What's the minimum and maximum Cosby could get? Sentencing depends on a few factors beyond simply being found guilty. After the court has assessed Cosby's health and whether he is ultimately a threat to society, the judge will hear evidence from both prosecutors and the defense. This gives both sides the opportunity to make their cases for everything from incarceration to house arrest. Ultimately, since felony sexual assault charges have a mandatory state prison term, Cosby could end up spending a few years, as too much as 30 years behind bars. At his age, that would be a life sentence. It would be. That'd be a long time. Where do his other lawsuits stand? Cosby faces several other lawsuits that are expected to move forward this summer on the West Coast. In the first civil case, Judy Huth has accused Cosby of raping her when she was 15 in 1974, making her a minor at the time of the alleged incident. Although California statute of limitations has long since passed for any criminal charges to be considered, Huth is pursuing this in civil court. She could ultimately seek damages from Cosby, who has already given a sworn deposition in the case. The case is expected to proceed at the end of July in Los Angeles. Janice Dickinson, Auntie Janice. We'll swing back to Auntie Janice in a minute. Janice Dickinson, one of the 5 women who testified against Cosby during the retrial, is pursuing a defamation lawsuit against Cosby, also in Los Angeles. In March, the California Supreme Court refused Cosby's latest appeal and ordered that the case move forward. Dickinson had publicly accused Cosby of drugging and raping her in 1982. She's suing him for defamation after Cosby and his representatives accused her of lying about the incident. Janice Dickinson told me when I was interviewing her at her house that in her book she talked about how back in 1982 they were all like in Lake Tahoe together, and it was another like couch incident that you've heard of before, and she put that in her book. And when she put it in her book, his camp went just buck wild on her and threatened to sue her for defamation, blah 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 blah. But the thing about defamation cases is that they have to be actually defamation. Like, if it's true, then you can't get in trouble for it. And there's publishing laws about it. Like, it has to be ran in a national publication. Something like that. Like you can't just be like, that person said something mean to me. That's defamation. It's not. Like, it actually has to be at a legitimate place in the world. Has Cosby paid out any money to accusers? It was established during the retrial that Cosby paid Andrea Constand $3.38 million in a settlement in 2006. If there are other settlements, they have not been made public. Ooh, that's a lot of money, folks. But that's the thing about civil and criminal. Once criminal gets sent into motion, nobody can take it back. Once that ball is going and the state has picked up the case, nobody can get them off of it. That's just how it goes. Could more accusers sue Cosby now that he's been found guilty? Yes, since Cosby has been convicted as a felon in criminal court, he may end up facing even more criminal suits seeking damages from accusers. To date, more than 60 women have publicly accused Cosby of drugging and or raping him. Can Cosby stand trial for another case while he's in jail? Yes, he could be subpoenaed to attend other trials, but he would remain incarcerated, meaning he would be transported by authorities and unable to move about freely during the trials. That would be very expensive for the prison system, but whatever. And really, most of the time, other than the judge like wanting him to be there for a trial to assess his credibility, his attorneys will probably handle most of it. I guess he would have to be ordered to appear. I don't think subpoenaing would be really, like, his own attorneys wouldn't subpoena him. That'd be crazy. Where will he serve his sentence? If Cosby is sentenced to prison, his age and health will likely mean he'll serve time in a lower security prison. He may even be sent to a facility with an assisted living home that either has medical facilities or is located near a hospital. That's very interesting. Does Andrea Constand get any damages? Since this was a criminal trial, Constand does not receive damages. Keep that in mind. We're going to circle back to that later. It should be noted that the case against Cosby was brought up by the Commonwealth and not Constant. She was not the plaintiff in the case. As we mentioned, Cosby already paid Constant $3.38 million in a settlement in 2006. She could pursue damages from Cosby for any number of reasons, like mental anguish and stress caused by 2 trials. Constant has not commented either way. Does he have to pay for the trial? The Montgomery County Court, where both trials took place, will likely request that Cosby reimburse the county for expenses related to the trials, which total well into the millions. Oh. It must suck to get caught up on criminal stuff. Maybe don't do bad things. What was the biggest challenge in deliberations from the first trial to this one? The jury in this first trial deliberated for 6 days, about 52 hours overall. Wow, that's a long time. Without being able to reach a verdict, the first trial ended in a hung jury. Oh, wow. In a retrial, the jury deliberated for less than 2 days, for a little over 10 hours before reaching a verdict of guilty on all 3 charges. Last question. Why was he convicted this time but not last time? This is a question we'll be debating for years to come, but 2 of the big differences between the first and second trial have to do with the climate in which each case was tried and the number of witnesses who were called. In the first trial, Constant was the lone witness accusing Cosby of drugging and raping her. In the retrial, 5 other women, in addition to Constant, told their stories about Cosby drugging and raping them during the past 30 years. Also noteworthy to this case is that even though the first trial occurred less than 1 year ago, it was a different cultural climate. It happened before men like Harvey Weinstein were publicly accused of sexual assault, and it was before the hashtag #MeToo movement really gained momentum. For this part, Cosby employed different legal teams for each case, and each team used a different strategy in court. Where is Cosby now? At his home in suburban Philadelphia. Well, how very interesting. Now let's go to Twitter, because that's where it really matters. And that's where I kind of forgot that he got convicted today, and then I woke up this morning and I saw a bunch of people being like, oh, these gold diggers, these whatever, but like, what's her face already got her money. She has nothing, like, other than testifying in the trial, like, she doesn't get anything out of it. So she's already settled with them. The case took the trial. The state took the trial, not them. They're not the plaintiffs. Okay, so popular on Twitter. This is my favorite section of Google, hands down. Rose McGowan. Cosby is guilty. I'm sorry if you loved a lie. His victims can now exhale. Thank you, the judge and jury. Thank you, society, for waking up. Doesn't sound bad to me. Patricia Arquette. The state of America is this. Even with dozens of accusers, we are all afraid Bill Cosby would walk. Elizabeth Banks. Finally, some justice for Bill Cosby's victims. May they find a little hashtag peace today. Hashtag guilty. Padma Lakshmi. In a fitting end to a sexual assault awareness month, Bill Cosby was found guilty today. Thinking of all the women he traumatized over the past 50 years, as a survivor myself, I know that pain never fully goes away, but I hope his victims finally see some semblance of peace. Amber Tamblyn. Time's up, Bill. Time's been up for you. For years, and now justice. Justice for women. I know who you've hurt, and those I've never met. Good riddance. Amber Tamblyn. So that's, view more on Twitter. Let's do. But what really shocked me this morning was people's responses to a criminal trial being like, oh, they're just in it for the money, and it's like, how expensive it is to launch an investigation against someone, let alone like have like a team of like just to go through the expense of a trial, to going to court and taking all that time of your life out of it. Like, it is a costly event to be in any kind of litigation, let alone criminal. It's really nothing to sneeze at when sexual offenses in particular end up with a sentencing. Like, they get convicted in sentencing. Like, that's major. It's not something that happens all the time. It's like a very, very rare thing for it to actually happen. However, it's very cool that Vulture gave credit to the hashtag #MeToo movement for putting this together. But I think what also hasn't been mentioned in a while, particularly with Bill Cosby, is that this was all kind of set in motion. Like, Janice Dickinson said her piece in her book a few years ago, but what really spun Bill Cosby before the hashtag #MeToo movement was Hannibal Buress during a stand-ups that a video, a cell phone video that someone made of Hannibal Buress during a regular old stand-up set in somewhere in Middle America. And him being like, yeah, Cosby did this, that, and the other thing, and made a joke about it. When I say he made a joke about it, it sounds like it was in poor taste, and it wasn't. Like, he was really calling him to the carpet. And that's kind of what set things in motion for Bill Cosby. And then, all of a sudden, after that first trial, here comes the hashtag #MeToo movement, and that was I think that was more so the straw that broke the camel's back, not necessarily the first thing. So, snaps for Hannibal Buress, y'all. There's power in stand-up sets, even if someone recorded it when they're not supposed to. But, what do you think is going to happen in the next wave of trials of hashtag #MeToo? Because I was in a meeting yesterday morning, and one of the people in the meeting were talking about getting their story together to go to different media outlets, mostly trade publications, because it's like a writing representation agency family deal kind of a situation. I don't even know the full story on it, but I was like, well, before you decide to put it out, you need to go find other people that also have had the same thing happen to you, because there's power in numbers. There's real power in numbers. The only time that anybody's ever able to make anything stick is when there's real numbers stacked up against people on any, in the media, any kind of witnesses, whatever. In the first trial, there was no hashtag #MeToo, and it was just her. It was just her doing the testimony. And then when they went to the second trial, they had all these other people on top of #MeToo, and they couldn't just ignore it. They couldn't just sweep it under the rug. There was no way to get around it, and they finally made it happen. And granted, so many people over the years have had that same thing happen to them, and if it's only three that really get convictions, but it's better than nothing, because there's a lot of people that have been hurt out there that sit by with not even a sliver or a morsel of justice, and those people just keep going about hurting people, which is a no-no. That's terrible. Some of the things that I read this morning from people that I know were posting, oh my god, it's such a long time ago, why is this even relevant? It's if you think that kind of behavior, if you think drugging people and hurting them is excusable, then clearly you think it's excusable any time that it's done. If you don't think that is excusable behavior, as per the law outlines, then it shouldn't be done any time ever at all. So that whole, it was such a long time ago argument just doesn't fly. It just doesn't. And we do have statutes of limitations for some things, but for some things we don't. And 2004 falls within the statute. And most people that endure those sorts of crimes have to live with it every day, and it's just as fresh years later as it was the day that it happened. So keep that in mind when you're out there running your mouths and thumb thugging. But thank you for coming by the Cosby edition of #NoFilter Friday on Public House Media. If you are a podcast listener from iTunes or iHeartRadio or Google Play, give us a star or a comment or a recommendation, share it, things like that, and I will see you next week. See you later, kids. David. Who knows who we can trust anymore? All I know is if anything ever came out against Mr. Rogers, I'd lose all faith in humanity. Oh, David, I lost all faith in humanity a long time ago. A long, long time ago. But there's other things that will also make you regain it. So it's kind of like this constant washing machine of finding and losing faith in humanity. Anyway, see you later, folks.